What's going on, Taylor Kyles? What's up, buddy?
Hey,
It's been a while.
I missed you.
No, you didn't.
A little bit. But Dynamic Duo's back, baby. Nothing to report quite yet. The deadline already started. DeAndre Swift got signed by the Bears, but nothing on the Patriots front quite yet.
Okay, so here we are. We are 15 minutes into the, one of the funniest terms in sports. In all of sports, legal tampering. But the league knows what this is right now, and obviously, the way it's set up, everybody knows now. You can start talking to people immediately, and pretty good group right now. We got a lot of people in here, so I'm excited about this. You can start immediately talking about what you want to do, but you can't do it yet. So on and on they go here, and the Patriots have basically every need imaginable. So I guess really, here's what we'll run through kind of all of the latest buzz. We'll keep up with breaking news if there is any. We'll hang on here as long as if there's news, we'll keep talking about it. If there's not news, we'll just kind of do a little preview primer about what's ahead, talk about what we're interested in. And I'm sure if you've been following along with Taylor on all of his shows and all of his writing, you've got a good sense of, where his head is at. I'm going to try to change that, but unsuccessfully. I don't expect to, but that's fine. We're curious what the chat thinks. We're going to take some of it. We're going to put up your comments. We're going to talk about them. Super interested what you guys think. But really comes down to a team with a crap ton of needs, Taylor, that can address them in a lot of ways. They obviously free agency, and they have cap money to burn, as Mayo said, and then kind of walked back a little bit. They have high draft picks, number 3, and then high in each round based on where they finished. They can obviously draft there, trade back, do a lot of different things. They could look at this as a 2 to 3 year plan and not try to do it all at once. And I'm kind of curious where fans are here. Do they want big swings, or do they want them to kind of trickle it out and be a little bit conservative?
Not necessarily. Yeah, Deion Dawkins basically tweeted that he's about to get cut by the Bill. It looks like it's going to be a cut because they've been getting rid of people trying to shed some cap space. So He's a good tackle. So he's a starting caliber guy. New England obviously needs tackles on both sides of the line of scrimmage. He's better than Jonah Williams, who I have as, at left tackle outside of Tyron Smith and Trent Brown. Obviously, Trent Brown's not coming back. Tyron Smith, I don't see him being interested. Deion Dawkins is now, I think, the best left tackle on the market. So that's going to be a really interesting one to watch.
Yeah. And again, I know you got a lot of your guys out there, and I know there's a lot of guys that you like and that you think can fit. It really comes down to philosophy here. What are the Patriots going to do? Are they going to come out swinging big, or are they going to kind of let the market come to them? And it's funny because it's like, you have the Wolf school. If you're going to talk about what he does, or what he's done, or what his father has done, and that type of team building there, obviously that comes more through the draft and develop. And they have said that that's what they want to do. They want to draft and develop. They want to get faster. They want to get more athletic. They want to be younger and have their own guys and give them a chance to play. That would lead you to believe that they're not trying to fix it and all of a sudden get back to the playoffs in year 1 just so Robert Kraft is happy. I think you have to look at this as maybe a 2 to 3 year window. In which case you don't have to come out swinging and go get the sexiest guy. There's people out there who are like, screw it. You got money to burn. Go get Calvin Ridley and try to fix as many problems as you can, and then figure out the rest. So where is your head at here in terms of approach? We'll start there. What do you want to see the Patriots come in and do? Right here as things open up.
I'd like to see them make sure that they address the premium positions first and foremost. So offensive line, wide receiver, general pass catcher. Really, wide receivers are the good ones on the market because you don't want to enter the draft with glaring needs at the premium positions. And especially with Dawkins hitting the market, I think there's enough guys where, you sign like a Jacoby Brissett as your veteran bridge because it's assumed and it's been reported the Patriots are likely going to go with the quarterback at number 3. They like Drake May. They like Jaden Daniels. So get that guy like Jacoby Brissett who can be a mentor figure, someone who is a galvanizing presence in the room and could maybe be a spot starter for you at times as well. Then offensive tackle, like I said, feel like they're going to end up just getting a developmental guy, because if you do get that quarterback in the first round, there's not a ton of tackles really ever outside of the first round where you can really plug them in and start them from day one. So get yourself, whether it's a Deion Dawkins or a Jonah Williams at left tackle. Hopefully they re-sign Mike Onwenu at right tackle, but do have Chuks Okorafor, worst case scenario, if they need somebody else. So make sure you get those rounded out. And then wide receiver. Calvin Ridley's at the top of the list. Obviously, he is in his own tier when it comes to this receiver market. I've seen debate saying he's not a wide receiver one. I think he could be your wide receiver one if you use him properly. He's a 1,000-yard receiver being used as an X, and that's not really where he thrives. He's more of a Z. Maybe use him in the slot where you can give him more advantageous positions where he's off the line of scrimmage. You can, move him around, have him like line up in bunches, stacks, things like that to make his life a little bit easier. If you put him in those spots, I think he can be like a pretty legit number one. Then maybe you draft a couple guys who you can develop and not force them to have to play super early on. So that's my big thing right now is address the premium positions. So you go to the draft, not needing, to take a young guy and then start them right out of the gate.
Right. So let's use here's the thing. If he's not a true 1, but he's a true 1.5, like if he was a top 10, if he's a top 15 receiver in the NFL, then yes, that's worth the money. I don't know if he's a top 20 or 25 guy, and I don't know that you're expecting. I mean, you had a decent situation last year. Granted, he's had a year plus away from football with the suspension and then leaving for personal reasons the year prior in 2021 and having an incomplete season. He hadn't played a full year since 2020 when he had elite production with Matt Ryan, and that was kind of the year that Julio had passed the torch over to him as the number one guy. But that's the last year, 2020, and now he's 29 years old. And that wasn't a terrible situation he was in last year. There were other receivers there to take some of the heat off him. They had some depth. I know they had some injuries along the way. You had a competent tight end. You have an up-and-coming quarterback. You have a creative head coach who would, try to find different ways to get you involved. And it was a pretty underwhelming season for him. So, like, which version of Ridley's closer to the real version? I know you're saying he's misused, but which version is the real version? The one that we saw in 2020 or the one we saw last season?
I think even what we saw last season, like he wasn't great as an X, but he was still making some crazy plays. Like he's making catches in tight coverage. You see the explosiveness where if you give him off coverage and, he hits you with a little double move, he'll be gone. He can run away from guys. I still think he's got a really good skill set. I just think you do want to make sure. I mean, that's what teams should do with their number one anyway. Like think about a Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp's crazy Madden season obviously had a lot to do with his own physical talent, but it also had to do with the combination of Sean McVay putting him again in those advantageous situations. Could he play X more often than he does? Absolutely. He's one of the best receivers in the NFL, great off the line of scrimmage. He's big, he's physical, but Sean McVay makes his life easier, which makes it easier for him to produce and create more big plays. And obviously Matthew Stafford with the no looks and just his crazy accuracy and his talent. But, if you have a number one, unless it is a guy like a Mike Evans who does thrive in those roles where you want to put him one-on-one constantly because he's going to cook most people that go up against him. But even guys like that, you even see premier X's in the NFL used in different spots and moved around. And we know Alex Van Pelt, he likes to move his wide receivers around. The Green Bay Packers like to do something similar. You like guys with positional versatility. So defenses don't really know where they're going to line up on a snap-to-snap basis, and it makes it hard to key in on, okay, he's lined up in this position, he's going to do this. It kind of gives you headaches. So I think that Calvin Ridley can come into the system and be a 1,000-yard receiver for you. And that's also considering the fact that he stepped away in 2021 for 2021 for mental health reasons, and was suspended all of 2022, and he still came out and was a very good receiver. So, I think that it did help when he was with the Falcons having a Julio taking a lot of attention, but I think he's a dude.
I know. But again, the numbers at the end of the year, 1,000 is a nice round number, and that's fine. I think he had 9 games sub 50 yards, and one was like 52 or 53. That's kind of a.
Also, Deion Dawkins, I think he was joking. He signed an extension. That's so annoying. So never mind.
Yeah. Deion, don't worry about it.
Oh my God.
So Ridley did a whole lot of nothing for like the majority of games last year. That's what concerns me there. Like I said, everyone sees the number at the end of the year and it's like, oh, 1,000's pretty good, right? But again, on a decent target share, 136 targets, But again,
Well, I
1,
can pull something
2,
up actually.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games under 50 yards and one at 53. So
let me hit you with this. Let me hit you with this though, because my buddy at Next Gen Stats actually, because I put up a whole compilation yesterday showing Calvin Ridley. When I was watching the film, because I know he's
maybe he's open and not being thrown to, and they're missing him at times.
Yeah, they're missing him. He's also got hit. Remember that Brandon Cooks year where there was a lot of hidden yardage because he was getting so many pass interference flags because guys were just, he was getting beat deep. There was some of that as well, so that hidden yardage. But also for Calvin Ridley, 64 targets with less than a 50% completion probability, most among wide receivers. 65% catchable target rate, tied for 7th lowest among starting wide receivers. And he did have a drop problem early on in the season, but that kind of cleared up as the year went on. So that's pretty important to remember as well. Like Trevor Lawrence is fantastic, but there were some times where they weren't really on the same page or he just missed them. So I understand there's concerns and those are totally valid. But again, I think there's a lot of things that were working against Ridley, and I think he's a lot better than, again, if you look at the tape, like he's a very good player. I think that's pretty clear. But there were a lot of things that also worked against him. So I understand some hesitation, but also the Patriots are kind of desperate. You're going to have to pay, as a lot of people call it, the suck tax. That's the reality. As long as you're not pushing past, at or past 25 million, I think pay the guy what he wants. I think it's also going to be on like a 2-year deal, 3-year deal that's really a 2-year deal. So it's not like this is going to be a long-term thing, and you have a quarterback on a rookie contract. So the idea is he's the guy that gets paid a lot of money, but then you got Kendrick Bourne on a modest deal, and you're probably going to have 1 or 2 rookies who are going to be cheap for you too. So, I don't really think it's going to be much of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, you can afford it, no doubt about it. And I do agree. I think any deal that gets reported is going to come in at like 4 and 100, but it's really going to be probably 2 and 41, 42, somewhere in that range. And then everything else is going to be funny money on the back end that's never going to be seen. And, if you like him, you renegotiate that number down in year 3, or you cut him outright and take a cap hit of whatever it is that it is. And that's the price of doing business. And you have some dead money there. And that's where I think he's probably going to be. But I mean, if you look at, and again, age is a little bit different, but the Colts just up with Michael Pittman.
You want to talk about signing or paying a lot of money for a 1B? Whew, that's crazy money.
I think, and so but the point is, it's not what the guy is, it's what they're worth. And this is why it's just a fool's errand, generally speaking. I think if you have a philosophy, you got to kind of stick with it. And so this is where Wolf comes in. If he's going to be given the reins, and I know there's been reports that they might go actual GM hunting after the draft and free agency. That seems silly to me for a zillion reasons.
We had Jeff Howe on the show last week, and he was saying he and Phil were both on the same page. Phil Perry of NBC Sports Boston, it would take something pretty catastrophic for Elliot Wolf not to end up being the general manager. I think it really has more to do with just timing and things like that. They can, and they have to, because when he gets hired, they have to go through the Rooney Rule and the hiring process. So it's true, but just to put it out there.
I get it. People talked about it, and I but we won't get into that here. I get why it would make sense to have the people that did scouting for you all year long run your draft, because anybody coming in cold is at a huge disadvantage here. But this being an offseason of such incredible importance, you look at the teams that did go GM hunting, they hired one immediately before a head coaching search because they knew they didn't have people in place. You're this far down the road, you got to consummate the marriage, so I just don't see it, as a thing, that they would move on for him. So let's just get back to Wolf, okay? You want to get into, and again, we really only have a blueprint of what his dad did. So if you're following that, you would think it's draft and develop and don't, take big shots. And I would also say, look at how many times the Packers, what was the joke with Aaron Rodgers? That they're not getting him talent. They're not getting him receivers and this and that, because granted, they could have drafted them, but they didn't want to spend big. I think it is very much a fool's errand to go looking for your wide receiver in free agency, because this is what happens. You have the exact class you're looking at now, the 1B receivers, or even worse, go back a couple of seasons when it was Aguilar, Curtis Samuel, whoever it was that the Jets ended up signing that year, who'd played with Tennessee before that. Who am I thinking of?
Robert Woods?
No, that's that was the 2B class. Okay. and you ended up having to pay 13, 14, 15 million for those guys. So you're paying for the Higgins, Pittmans, and Ridleys, Tyreek Hill money, and you're getting a fraction of that production here. So it doesn't make sense. You're always going to overpay for less. So you have to draft and develop. I have to think that is the direction they'll go. And for the first time ever, I'll say, I don't want them to go sign that big receiver. I would rather plug. If you look, how many needs would you say this team has, Taylor?
All of them.
All of them. But legit, you would probably say you probably have at minimum 10, 12, 15 legitimate holes to plug. Not all of them of the same level of importance, quarterback, tackle, wide receiver one, but you probably have a lot to plug. Corey Davis, thank you, Logan. That's what I was thinking of. Corey Davis, that was that class that year. It was underwhelming, but you wanted him to get somebody, and that's what they ended up with. Corey Davis, thank you. So that's it. So, I would rather see them plug as many of these holes as possible than enter the draft saying, I can take my elite left tackle now because I'm in position to. I can take my quarterback. I can take my receiver. Could I live with, I'll ask you, could you live with Pop, Bourne, a second round rookie? Who knows what you have in any of the guys who are coming back with a chance of, showing you something, plus say like a Mooney or a Samuel or something to round things out. Could you live with that for year one, knowing that you're going to take a bigger swing maybe in year two when you've settled some other positions like the offensive line and you have a quarterback with a year under their belt? Could you live with that?
I could. I would just be like, okay, sure. I don't feel great about it, but also if their philosophy is that we don't want to overpay for a guy like again, because he's the only one, but then at the same time, you can also still engage in the trade market. And even there, the more I think about trading for, say, a T. Higgins, I don't really like that idea. I
don't think he's the guy either. I don't think he's got the profile of a true number one.
Ayuk. That's what I was going to say. Brandon Ayuk is the only guy where I'm
Ayuk I would trade for today. That's what I mean. If you could get an Ayuk caliber guy, or like the Bears getting DJ Moore last year, yes, that's a one to me. That's a one. You go get that if you can. I don't know that you do that. I don't know that you do that for a Higgins, and I don't know that you pay the big money for Ridley either.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I will say, in terms of the philosophy for Elliot Wolf, what it's going to look like, from people I've talked to, I do know that while a lot of the core philosophy is what he learned from his dad, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? He does. I believe they are still going to go in a direction where they're still going to, try and free agency. We've already seen the reports, we've heard it, but it's not going to be like the Packers where it's almost comical how little they're interested in trying to go out. Because I think the one big free agent signing they got was Julius Peppers back in the day when they were really rolling. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think they're going to do both. But once they get to the point where, the ball gets rolling and they have a couple years under their belt where the guys they draft are developed and they start contributing, they're going to lean more towards that. And if they do have a glaring hole where it's we can't just draft a guy and expect him, kind of with the receivers, where you don't really want to draft a guy and be you're our top dog. If that's the case, then I think, they're going to still tap into free agency. Just put that out there.
They might. But like I said, is from my perspective, and again, I can talk myself into anything in the sense that, hey, if they take a big swing at Ridley, okay, better to have Ridley than to not have Ridley. All I'm saying is I think the smarter play is probably to address those positions. If you have a lot of cap space, let everybody swing big at the guys who aren't necessarily worth the dollar they're going to get. And then it's kind of the old Patriots approach, but you have a crap ton of money to do it. You can get a lot of those guys who are right on that cusp of the big money deal, but aren't quite going to get it for a good bit cheaper and plug, because you're a team with so many holes. To me, I think it's free agency is for teams that are close, not for teams that are this far away. How many teams have you seen? How many teams have you seen fix it in free agency? Again, if you go back in every single year, and I've pointed this out to you in our text thread, look at each pocket of prolonged success that the Patriots had over the course of their dynasty, and look at the 2, 3, 4 drafts that preceded it. And you will see within those drafts, 6, 7, 8 core members picked up there and then retained and brought along onto the next wave. and then look at the dips and look at the 2-3 drafts that preceded those. And it's almost always there. And the Patriots, for what it's worth, have missed so profoundly in so many drafts leading up to recently that they just don't have that baseline. I think you have to put it. Let's call last year, I mean, are you calling last year a success? Obviously you have Gonzalez. But where would you put it? Because
long term, yeah, I just think that they just so blatantly ignored immediate needs, and like we talked about this last year.
I don't want to roll the tape from last year. I don't want to do it.
But you were right. You were right. Where I liked the short term, I thought they had enough, and they didn't. So now I try to fine tune my process because the point is not to be right. The point is to make the most educated.
It's not. I'm not saying that.
Right, and I'm just giving you your flowers because at the time I think long term. If Mapu, White, and Gonzalez hit, they have the talent where those are difference makers. But like you said, they still have massive holes at tackle, at wide receiver. And that's because they ignored positions that they did need in the moment. So, yeah, I mean, I would – a short-term success, no. Long-term, if they hit those, I think so.
They have to stack them up, like a lot of them. Because, again, I don't want to go – scoreboard watching here, but obviously, Mac ended up being what he's being. And again, I won't begrudge them for taking a swing there because you had to. I didn't like everything that led up to that point. And I am curious, we talked about this offline. What would they have done if Mac went 14? Just not had a quarterback? I'm confused. But again, you took a shot at a need there. Plus you had Barmore and Stevenson. So that's decent. Provided you re-sign Barmore, then that's an absolute keeper. But you're looking at the 22 draft right now, especially Jack Jones being a whiff. You're hoping Marcus Jones pans out and the rest of it is, again, Cole Strange, let's hope he's at least a competent guard. I thought you talk about mismanagement of an asset, taking a guard in the first round, where you could have gotten that type of talent a few rounds later. Silly. Thornton doesn't look good, but we'll see. Marcus Jones, you're hoping. Jack Jones gone, Pierre Strong gone, Bailey Zappi probably gone. And on it goes. So you move on to next year. And as you said, you might have a player or two that can be part of a long-term core. And Gonzalez might be a cornerstone, but you have White, you have Mapu, a bunch of interior linemen that to varying degrees of success. And you came away with it with pop. So it's hardly a home run. That means you really do need 2 to 3 legit home runs in a row to get to a point where you can legitimately contend. It's just how it works. Like you can't find these players. Maybe you have an immaculate offseason where you find every single value and do everything right and find guys who are undervalued other places and make them work for you as Belichick had done in the past. But it's asking a lot. So, I mean, it might be a 2, 3, 4 year rebuild in the sense that you have to draft and commit to those players and develop them. That's another thing Belichick did not well is draft guys and use them occasionally and opt to play his veterans instead because he trusted them more. Then you don't even know what you have in certain guys. It was a silly tactic, and it's where they are now. So I think I hate the idea of passing up potential franchise quarterback, but honestly, like if someone's going to give me a haul of picks, I'm now starting to change my mind because I think they need a massive hit. I would love another first rounder next year, in addition to a second round this year for somebody to jump up and you to move down. I don't want to pass on the guy, but again, they need some big time impact guys in here fast.
I keep going back and forth because one, I really do think that they need desperately a quarterback, like a legit guy who can at least steer the direction of the franchise. And even I like a guy if they do trade, I like a guy like Rattler. He gets a lot of crap, but I feel like people aren't really watching the tape closely enough where I don't think he's small. He's short, and that is a problem. And I completely acknowledge that he is on the older side as well. But he's one of the best, actual quarterbacks, not just prospects, but quarterbacks in this class. I like him a lot better than most of the guys that are in that tier. All right, you get the top 3, then it's JJ is after them because he's got talent, he's young, and you can develop it. Then it's Bo Nix. I like Michael Penix, but he's got so many red flags that really scare me. Rattler is the guy where I feel like he has the fewest red flags and could actually contribute and drive the boat. If you did say, hey, I'm going to get a haul of picks, I'm going to deck out the offense with all these guys we're going to develop and put in, position to succeed. Because one thing, I would be more worried about this draft in their ability to be good quickly if it wasn't so deep. Like, the receivers are so good, it's going to be hard to mess this up, especially if you really do commit to the development. Like, you got Tyquan Underwood, who I'm really excited about in terms of a guy who can help when it comes to like these guys' technique, because whatever was going on the past couple of years just wasn't it. Like, we talk about the draft misses. Yeah, part of it is just on the picks, but also because Belichick didn't put coaches in position where they could really develop these guys quickly and have them contribute on top of not even playing them. So I feel like every day I feel a little bit differently. I could talk myself into either one. I'm leaning more towards get the quarterback, like just go with the easy answer. And Vikings are signing Jonathan Grenard. He was somebody that I really liked, but I also wasn't sure that he was a great fit. So it looks like Grenard is basically going to be the replacement for Daniil Hunter, most likely. But yeah, I would not be upset with them getting a haul of picks. I like that because if you get 2 first-rounders and you don't like the quarterback you got this year, then you can trade up and get someone next year. But that being said, I don't know how I'd feel about them going in with just kind of duct tape at quarterback.
It's the scariest place to be. But I get the philosophy of, you're so far away, you can't even make good on the quarterback on the rookie deal, because by the time you stack up enough good drafts and surround him with enough talent to be good again, you might be 3 years down the road and you're kind of out of that rookie window, which maybe means you got like a 1-year push, and year 4 is like where everyone makes that push because that's the last cheap year. And then, you're in extension territory and off you go.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think they've done such a disservice to themselves. And what's funny is everything I'm saying goes completely against what I normally think, because the Patriots in the past have always been, I think fans need to almost recalibrate their own brains here in terms of how we used to approach, how people who follow the Patriots used to approach free agency. And that used to be, just get Tom his freaking weapon and spend some cash. What are you guys doing? Because you knew that you were already at worst a Final Four team every single year. So why not get that thing that's going to push you over the top? It made no sense to not spend a little bit to have that luxury item because you did have everything else. This is the 1 year where I'm like, I don't want that, because I think it's a waste on this roster. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to be mean. I just think they're so far away. I don't get it. I don't get what it's going to do for you to make big splashes right now. I think that's for teams that are close, or desperate teams that are poorly managed. So I don't necessarily want to see it. I am curious how it goes. Now, let's throw in the plan B. Go ahead. You have something, and I want to ask you another question here.
I would just say the only reasons I would go after like the big splashes, I think the most realistic one would be like Christian Wilkins and Calvin Ridley. I would justify Calvin Ridley because I think, especially if you have a rookie, and these guys are probably going to end up starting at some point in their rookie seasons, I think you need him to have like the guy. I think Kendrick Bourne and Pop are good, solid safety blankets. Hunter Henry as well. But I think it's like, all right, game on the line. If I'm going to scheme it open for somebody to make a big play, I think it's Calvin Ridley. And I don't think there's any other guys who I feel confident in that regard. That's kind of why how I would justify Ridley. With Christian Wilkins, I think this is a team where if they're going to make a playoff push sooner than later, it's going to be because the defense dominates. Kind of like Tom Brady in his first Super Bowl year, where it was a strong run game, which we have a pretty good idea that Alex Van Pelt is going to want to have, considering what he's had in his previous stops in Cleveland. And I kind of lost my train of thought there. But anyway, strong defense and a good run game. If you have Christian Wilkins and Barmore on the inside, you don't really need to spend big on the edges. You get solid guys who you make sure that they don't let the quarterback get outside. I think that's the step where it's like, all right, they can actually be a legitimate playoff contender because the defense is just going to dominate and the offense has to not make mistakes. Basically like what we saw last year, except the offense just couldn't help but make mistakes. But yeah, those are the only 2 splash signings where I'd be like, yeah, I agree with this. I think they're guys who are ideally would be worth the price tag because they are very good players. And I think they would at least put you in a position where, again, Ridley helps your young quarterback. You can get confidence by giving him a guy. And then the defense, if you have a dominant interior, that's just hard for anybody to stop.
Yep. Tony Pollard going to the Tennessee Titans. What an interesting situation there. He was supposed to be everything in Dallas in kind of taking over as a number one for Zeke, and he really, really underperformed. Titans moving on from Derrick Henry, who I would imagine is going to be in the later wave of free agent running back signed as people kind of figure out how cheaply can I get this guy. But Tony Pollard going to Tennessee here. So we'll see. To address something we talked about earlier in the show, how long are teams going to wait? The answer is about 40 minutes. That's all they feel they need to do to make it look good here. Do not be surprised if over the next little bit we have a lot of different deals kind of rolling through, because I do think we've kind of hit that point in time where, well, screw it. They announced it. I'm going to announce it. 40 something years. Why not go for it? So that's where we are right now. Hold on one second. Trying to see if I have something here. So here's my question for you. Let's pretend they go down that route. Okay. Now you have, obviously the Bears have made it perfectly clear. Fields is over. They're going to take Caleb Williams, and that's that. Mac Jones goes for a 6th round pick. The Atlanta Falcons, I think, was a smokescreen all along. By all indications, there's no. They were never really in on it. Most likely you'll probably see a deal for Kirk Cousins come up in the next who knows how long. So Fields is gone. The Redskins also are assumed to be in the quarterback market.
You're not that anymore.
Huh?
The Commanders.
God, I can't.
I know. I'm trying to help you out.
Thank you. I normally just say Washington because Commanders doesn't come out of my mind. Commanders most likely going to take a quarterback as well. So can you talk yourself into either Justin Fields or Sam Howell?
No. I think if you can get those guys for like a 7th.
I'm saying a low round, 5th or 6th.
Maybe, but Sam interests me a little bit more.
Sam kind of interests me. Low key, no one's talked about Sam Howell, and he interests me a little bit.
Yeah, because I do like some of the stuff he's put on tape. Like, if we're talking about consistent quarterbacking, he's super inconsistent. I'm not going to say, but, we know what these guys are. I don't have to, beat the bush and be like, oh, they got flaws. Everybody knows they've got flaws. Justin is so talented, but he really scares me because 3 years into your career and having, I was watching Darnell Mooney's tape. There's a game where he missed him 3 times when he was wide open against the Commanders. There was one where Mooney just is on the ground and he's looking down like, this is my life. And they're friends.
I think there's enough tape on Justin Fields to have an exact idea what type of guy you're getting. And I think that's why there's no market, because I don't think anybody thinks he's anything beyond a 1 or 2 year Band-Aid of the Justin Fields experience, which is completely inaccurate, locking in on his first read, maybe hitting them, maybe not. But once he gets past that, he's just going to go and he's going to freestyle outside the pocket, do his thing, do some things with his legs. And if you can live with that, that's fine. It's actually not a horrible thing to have in a situation where you're still working on your offensive line and you don't have the greatest receivers out there, because why not let them try to get open after being covered for 8 seconds instead of, try to actually just beat man coverage, in 2.5 seconds, as the Patriots obviously last year had a tough time doing. They didn't have a lot of man beaters out there on the field. So maybe Fields helps a situation like that and, adds a little entertainment value. And if that's how you look at it, especially if you do a draft and develop 2nd or 3rd round quarterback, sure, I could talk myself into it. May intrigues me a little bit more though.
I mean, I wouldn't want either guy being a starter. If it's Justin Fields, I would be like, all right, we're going back to the 1920s. We're just running the ball until literally that Bills game where it's just we run the ball until we just can't, until it's 3rd and 15. It's all right, I guess, or 3rd and 10, whatever. But yeah, I don't like either one of those guys as legitimate options unless you're saying we are going to get the boatload of picks, get the future first, get a bunch of picks in the top 100. Then I'm all right, I can stomach a year of Justin Fields if I know that the rest of the offense is just going to be stacked in terms of young talent. And especially, I think that you can get good corners and edge defenders, day 2, day 3 range. That excites me because I think if you get a haul, then you can address the offense and get young contributors on defense. In that scenario, sure, I'll put up with a year of Justin Fields. But outside of that, I couldn't do it. Watching the tape was rough, man. It was not easy.
It's not pretty there, and it doesn't get a ton better. If you look at most of his metrics with the accuracy, he's the worst in the league, if not one of the least accurate quarterbacks, and that's just the throws he makes. Yeah. Forget about what he misses, and what he doesn't see. Because he doesn't get through his progressions quickly. And a lot of people thought maybe year 1, year 2, it was the system. They were trying to do things with him. They wouldn't kind of play to his strengths. I think by year 3, you have enough tape on Fields to have a pretty good idea.
And I still don't think he was put in the best positions to succeed, but also, if you're a quarterback, needs to be able to some degree overcome that kind of adversity. And again, having an offense that's actively working against you, as Patriots fans know, is not, a quarterback can only do so much, but even still, it's like you still have wide open receivers, man. And you're missing them. So whose fault is that? And with Davis Mills, I see him as more of a Bailey Zappi, where he's a solid spot starter, but I don't want him playing more than like a handful of games in a season. Although, if they do get rid of like a Davis and they're like, all right, we want another younger guy who might be able to play if, Jacoby gets hurt or whatever, and this young guy isn't ready, sure. But I don't see him as a guy that you want, even as a bridge option for like a full season.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I want to keep going with a couple of things real quick. Hold on, I'm sending Ahmed a little note here. Real quick, we do want to tell everyone in the chat and watching the show, first off, thanks for watching. Second, throw us some likes if you can. We always like that. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. If you don't like us, I guess you're totally within your right to not like us, and that's fine. You can give a thumbs down, but we like thumbs ups better. I learned something cool, I think. Is it here? You can do different things with your FaceTime camera when you do different things. It didn't work for me there. But give us some likes. Give us some likes and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, please support our sponsors. If you're interested in this sort of thing, you like your daily fantasy and you want to get in on the action, check out PrizePicks, our official sponsor and the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Easy, exciting way to play DFS. You don't have to go on other sites battling bots and pros and sharks and algorithms and X, Y, and Z. You just kind of make your picks, and that's that. All you have to do is basically pick anywhere between 2 and 6 players and say over or under on a particular stat projection. And that's the whole thing. Really easy, intuitive layout. I know football season is over, but you have a ton of stuff with basketball and March Madness coming and the NBA playoffs soon there. And you're definitely going to want to have this hooked up in time for football season because it's a ton of fun. You can win 100 times your money back on PrizePicks with as few as 4 correct picks. It does offer injury insurance too, so you're not going to get hosed if you pick the guy who gets knocked out or who doesn't play in the game. So you don't have to worry about that. So check it out if you want to. Head over to, what does it say on the screen there? Oh, download the app. Code CLNS. That's all you have to do. It's as easy as pie. Download the app. Code CLNS. You get a deposit match up to 100. And trust me, you don't have to wonder, like, did it come through? You put in your deposit. Bing. It puts it right up on the screen. Little gift box next to you. And there's your 100. And you can play with it and do whatever you want and have fun. So once again, check it out. PrizePicks. PrizePicks. Download that app. Code CLNS. So back to what we were talking about before. As we get into our needs, Patriots took care of a couple of in-house guys, signing Kendrick Bourne, and you got a deal.
I think we should probably address David Bakhtiari got released by the Packers. I don't think he's a good fit. Yeah. He's injury prone. He's older. I don't know why he'd want to come to a place like New England. Like, you got to remember, this is unless I don't think he's trying to get a payday necessarily. He even tweeted about wanting to hoist a Lombardi and Lombardi Avenue, all that. Like, I don't think he's a very good fit for the Patriots. I don't think it's a good fit for Bakhtiari. Just wanted to acknowledge that one real quick.
Well, you can acknowledge it. I'm going to put you full screen while I go fiddle for a little bit, and you tell the folks here what you think about the signings here in terms of these two guys who got re-signed for, I guess, decent value. Some people called it a bit of an overpay, but I do ascribe to the philosophy. It's a large roster. You got to pay some people. You got to have some professionals out there, and probably better to bring in your own guys and see what you have there versus, overpaying in other places. So again, these are great security blanket types of receivers for whomever the quarterback is, who's going to be, quarterbacking the Patriots next year.
Yeah. So I'll start with Hunter Henry. I'll talk to you guys specifically. Starting off with Hunter Henry, one, he's a captain, the leadership, and the fact they had 0 tight ends under contract before he signed. So I think for the Patriots, there was a bit of desperation because, like John mentioned, he is a really good security blanket. He's not super explosive, but he's a red zone monster. He's a good chain mover. And then all the things he brings off the field as well. And he made south of $10 million. If it had been north like he made on his initial deal when he signed with the Pats, is when I would have been like, all right, hold the phone. This is a bit much. But I think it was a really fair deal, especially considering he would have been the best tight end on the market by a decent margin. He was one of the only guys with a proven track record. He got younger options on the market, but those guys are more projections like a Noah Fant, somebody like that. So Hunter Henry, I thought it was a good deal, keeping him off the market, making sure you retain somebody who is a leader on the team. Kendrick Bourne, I thought that was a phenomenal deal. One, it's very modest money if he doesn't produce. And if he does produce, then he can make some more. I think it was a great deal for both sides because he I think it was a maximum value of $33 million. That's pretty darn good for a wide receiver like Kendrick Bourne, who's shown such great potential. And then obviously coming off the ACL injury, you don't know exactly what you're going to get out of him, but it's a 3-year deal. And usually it takes a couple years for guys to really get back. Now, I wrote about this, and if you want to check it out, my free agent tracker, feel free. Highly recommend anyway. But Kendrick Bourne, really his thing is savvy route running. It's having great hands. And then there's the explosiveness after the catch, which might not be what it's been in past seasons, but I still think he's a guy who's going to be a productive player. And he's been attacking rehab. I believe he's ahead of schedule. He's supposed to be ready for training camp. He's supposed to be ready for mini camp, should be a full go for training camp, which is obviously great news. And again, another guy, electric personality. I know I was personally very excited to see that Kendrick Bourne is coming back. Really fun guy to cover. And I know Patriots fans, you guys watch him at home. You see the touchdown celebrations. You see all the excitement that he brings to his teammates. The offense doesn't really have a lot of those kind of high energy guys. So retaining him, I thought, was another great move. So Hunter Henry and Kendrick Bourne, I really, really like keeping both of those guys. Again, security blankets that you keep in the fold so you maintain some consistency. This offense is going to go through some pretty significant changes. It's going to be overhauled, I think, for the most part. But those are two guys that were doing well when things were going well. And they were not, net negatives. Guys like Juju Smith-Schuster and Devontae Parker, those are guys who weren't really doing a whole lot for you, particularly Devontae Parker last season, and it sounds like they're on the trade block. So I think this was a good move. I like what the Patriots have done, honestly, so far in free agency. They made moves to reinforce positions of need. So I really thought those were good starts. Let me just check to make sure I haven't missed any news. Let's see. I guess with Elliot, the fact that Bakhtiari has experience with Elliot Wolf kind of helps this case, but again, I just don't think he's a very good fit. Let's check the comments, see what y'all are talking about. Could we see a Judon extension? Absolutely. I believe I talked about this with Miguel Benzon, Pat's Cap on Twitter. You can check out that video after we're done with this if you want a little more insight into that kind of thing. But I think a Judon extension would make some sense if you want to, shave off some money on the cap, maybe. Also keep a guy around who we're talking about maintaining or retaining leaders. Judon is one of the leaders on that defense. He may not be a captain, but kind of like a Kendrick Bourne presence where he brings such great energy. And he's easily one of the only defensive linemen that they have who can play every single down for you. It's really him and Kendrick Bourne are the only guys that can do it on a high level. Obviously, coming off the injury, you don't know where he's going to be. So I think the extension would have to be something that was, friendly for both sides. But I also don't think that there's a lot of teams that are going to be banging the door down to try to overpay for Judon, especially considering he's not like a lot of other, premier pass rushers where, he thrives one-on-one. He can win one-on-one, absolutely. But really where he makes his money is on those line games and stunts and things like that. So I do think that Judon extension would be a realistic possibility.
I think he likes it here too. That's the thing, right?
Mm-hmm. I think it would be ideal for both sides. And again, he's towards the end of his career. I don't really see, any team being like, yes, we got to get Judon. We're going to, pay out of the nose for him. Especially like you can get edge rushers if you have the right kind of capital and you have good development. So yeah, I think that'd be a good deal.
And you talk about money. That's kind of the thing is, wouldn't you rather? I think again, you're going to overpay for lesser talent in free agency versus locking up some of your guys. I want to see money going towards Christian Barmore. I'd rather see it going towards Judon. Not saying you can't do a little of everything, but again, I'm of the plug hole mentality here when it comes to when it comes to all of that.
Yeah.
That's what I'd rather see.
When you're talking about trading Judon, what are you going to get for him? Like a 5th round pick, a 4th round pick? Like I don't think he's going to get very much on the trade market either. So when it comes to what he can give you versus what you can get in exchange for him, like trade Judon in the 3rd. Yeah, I don't know about that. I think he's too valuable for you to use him just so you can like move up or down the draft board by, like 5 or 6 picks or something like that. I don't really like that idea.
Yeah. There's also talk, and again, you're looking through all of the potential needs here. Talk that the Patriots are also trying to move off of Parker and Juju, which I don't think is a terrible thing because, again, at best, they're what, Taylor? Band-Aids. At worst, they're taking playing time for somebody you'd rather. This is kind of where I was last year with them, and it's the same place I am this year. What do I think Kayshon Boutte was a good receiver and deserved snaps last year? No. But did I want to see Parker and Juju out there at all? Like under any circumstance? No, not really. Because what were you playing for at this point? Like it didn't really make sense to me, and it doesn't really make sense now. Again, you have to develop the players that you have. An area where I think the Patriots have been completely deficient in recent years, and I know that this is something that Wolf has flat out said publicly. This is what we're doing, So, like, would you be shocked to see extended looks from guys like Boutte and Thornton, assuming they do get off Parker and Juju? Because I know you're not seeing. We didn't see enough by a long shot to justify the playing time. But do you want to see a little bit more, or do you want to say you might have to wash your hands with those guys too and start all over and just draft a couple of guys and make that your wide receiver room and live with it?
I'm not including Boutte in any future plans after everything that happened with him. I don't. Is he gonna have his freedom?
I think he's long gone. He might be in jail.
I don't know. Like he's messing with billionaires' money. I don't think that's gonna go.
I don't know that we see him again. I more was talking about last year with Boutte.
Oh yeah. No, we have this conversation so many times where for me it was. I understood that point of it's like what
I think he's long out of their plans. But a guy like Thornton,
I wanted to see more of him, but the thing is, when he was on the field, he was so bad. Like, I know I talked to him. I don't want to rag on the guy because it's not totally his fault. Like, one, he hasn't been developed very well, and they keep throwing him out there after all these injuries when I don't think he's been fully healed. He goes out and he gets hurt every time. So he's so far back in his development, and you saw it on the field where just because I wanted to have some clarity, I'm like, when it comes to running your routes, are you like given freedom or what's because I'm watching it and I'm like, he's taking forever to get open. I don't know what's going on. And he's like, yeah, Troy Brown gives me freedom in my routes to use my speed. And I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense because like the quarterbacks are getting ready to throw and he's not even looking at them. He hasn't even gotten out of his break yet. So, there's the point where you say, okay, yeah, play the young guys. But if they are deficiencies and they're actively hurting you when they're on the field, that's where it's like, okay, this is when you can't justify giving young guys snaps. Like Pop, different story. Pop is making plays. He's making some pretty glaring issues and mistakes as well, but he's giving you something. He's contributing. He's got the electric playmaking ability. That's where it's like, all right, you live with some of the warts because this is a talented guy who we want to get experience and he's contributing. With Thornton, you weren't really getting that outside of like the gadget touches. So with him, honestly, I would be interested to see how he does under this regime, under different coaching and a different system. But for the most part, he's just so far behind. And I think you're going to draft a couple of guys. So it's like, where does he even play? I think he's just going to be a gadget guy for you, best case scenario, because it's going to take a while for him just to kind of get up to speed.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. Taking a look around, you guys see anything? You see anything move wise?
Nothing.
All right. Yeah. So let's reset again. It's kind of interesting. I've always been a draft ahead of free agency guy. As I think it would make more sense, but Patriots are in a kind of a unique position here if they do plug a lot of holes to be able to enter the draft because of the benefit the Patriots have here of having this much money is they can actually fill a lot of holes in one way or another because the draft can only you can't plug holes beyond maybe the first 3 rounds, depending on where you are, in terms of people you think might be able to come in and play significant snaps for you, depending on the position too. You might find guys like guard or I'm not going to talk about special teams, but you might find other players you can draft up to round 4 and maybe have somebody really hit for you in a later round like Pop Douglas did this year. Sure, there's flyers everywhere, but realistically, you're going to get 2 and 3 year 1 contributors out of each draft if you do well for yourself. And if you have 10, 13, 14, 15 needs on this team heading into next season, you have to plug most of them here. One of the cool things the Patriots have is enough money to address most needs in some way where you're not entering the draft with 0, right? Meaning like if I don't get this, I'm dead, which means I can now swing at one of three or 4 premium positions early because I need it. And I'm going to need it again next year. I'll take another swing next year, another swing next year. One of my biggest issues with how the Pats have drafted for years is overdrafting defense, overdrafting depth, and not necessarily addressing needs or more to the point, addressing premium positions early in the draft where you go get those studs and then just kind of filling it out with whatever you have. That was their mistake. That's where everybody else kind of had them, and that's why they're so far behind here. But it is kind of interesting where if you do plug enough holes, you get your veteran quarterback just to have the stopgap. Okay, I'll roll with Brissett if I have to, or even if I have to for the first few games until my rookie is ready, and then enter it and say, I can do a lot of things here.
Yeah, and one with the, not addressing premium positions, I feel like it just got to the point where, and I'm not trying to poo-poo Bill or anything, but after you lose Brady and you lose Dante Scarnecchia, like with Scar, you could wait till the 5th round to get a tackle and it might work out well for you. Like, obviously, you have like guys like Matt Light who are still drafted high, but like you can turn those guys where nobody really expects much into guys who can play significant amount of snaps for you. Brady, you don't have to have the best receiving talent because he's going to maximize those guys. And I feel like it just got to a point where they didn't recognize that they didn't have those guys to plug those gaps. And it was like, all right, now you actually just need the talent, because you can't just get by. And they didn't do that. So now I really do feel like this front office and the staff really understands that is how it works. I think the way they address receiver is going to be very, very different. Everything they've said, the weaponizing, that keeps coming up, but I really think they're very serious about it. And that's how it sounds, because they're in on Ridley. There's, Jacina Anderson said, even if, after Kendrick Bourne was signed, they're going to be involved in the trade market. They want to get some big time weapons. So I'm sorry if I kind of went off track. I just had that on the brain and had to.
Yeah. No, it's all good. The other thing I want to talk about is let's just assume they do go in there and they hold that top 3 pick. It's interesting which way the conversation has gone over the last week or two. You get to the combine and none of the quarterbacks work out. And they'll all have pro days, and maybe that'll change perception there. But reality is you should know already, right? Like, is there anything Daniels or May or someone's going to do at a pro day that should change perception? You have the tape.
Pro day basically can just hurt, I feel like. All it can do is hurt you.
Yeah, so I don't believe that's going to move perception much. And then, at the combine, Drake May does a bunch of interviews, and everyone's like, I like this kid's makeup. And then all of a sudden, one day later, bang, 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 the hit pieces start coming, and he falls from, in some people's eyes, like, I know the Chris Sims, kind of clicky take of like, he's my 6th best quarterback out there, and I have him as a 2nd round grade or whatever. But like, a lot of people are like, I'm not touching this guy at 3. Do you think the slander has gone too far, or is that kind of how you feel about May as well?
I think a lot of it is just lying season, where I think things are starting to just leak out there because teams are trying to like affect guys' markets a little bit. But also, like, I think teams are aware of these kinds of like this discourse, but I don't think they're buying into it as much as maybe we are, because the whole talk of Drake May falling out of the top 3 is absolutely ridiculous. He is so talented. And if you want to talk about where guys are right now, then like, yeah, sure, you could make a debate over where his ranking is. He has one, I think his ceiling is like, it's him and I think Caleb Williams, and then I think there's a pretty sizable gap. Like, I like Jaden Daniels. He is not the same kind of passer that Drake May is. I think if it weren't for the running ability, we would be having a very different conversation. Is he a very good deep ball thrower? Yes. But he's a good deep ball thrower to a specific part of the field, which is one of the things that worries me. Whereas Drake May, I think if you're talking about like where these guys are going to be in 3 years, Drake May could be in the top 10 conversation. And I think he could even be a little bit higher depending on how well he's surrounded with talent, his development, all those things. But yeah, I think that this got a little out of hand where people are just like hyper focusing on the bad things. And it's like, yeah, sure. But a lot of his flaws are things that are, does he have bust potential if those things don't get fixed? Absolutely. And I don't want to, gloss over those things. But we're talking about where these guys are going to grow and where they're going to develop into. And his flaws are things I think that are mostly fixable.
Yeah, but I mean, Daniels is also kind of viewed as a better passer too, just in terms of May can make a lot of the throws, right? My question with May is this: has someone with whatever flaws he has bringing to the table here been able to fix them?
I think, like, you look at Josh Allen, where a lot of it was just...
Allen is a great example, but Allen is also, I think the Allen comparisons are nuts because you have to go back. You've watched tons, I know. Everyone who hasn't, go back and watch Josh Allen college tape. The guy was ridiculous, okay? Like, he was sloppy, but you couldn't bring him down. He's scrambling all over the place. He was a maniac with a massive arm too. So the toolsiness of Allen was a 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, where May's like an 8, 8, 8, 7, 6, 8. So you can't compare those guys. Allen lacked polish, and it looked for a year or two that he might not make it. So yes, his was a good turnaround.
I was like fundamentally, where
the other stuff was otherworldly with Allen and what he could do. Right.
Yeah, I think in terms of physical talent, he's much closer to like a Justin Herbert. And I even think like the arm tier is like just a bit lower than a Herbert because him and Josh Allen's in his own kind of place, and I think Herbert's under that, and I think that Drake May's a little lower. But again, his biggest issue is his footwork. And then with the Allen comparisons, like Allen, like you said, is insane. But also when he does his kind of like backyard football stuff, it's one of those where you really don't know if it's going to work out or not, depending on if it's like good Josh Allen or evil Josh Allen. With Drake May, when you see a lot of it, he's not doing things where it's like, oh, like Caleb Williams is more like Josh Allen in that regard, where it's truly like, oh my God, like I have no idea whether this is going to go well or whether it's going to go badly because this dude is like turning around and like reversing field and all that crazy stuff. With May, I feel like it's more that he understands how to like milk everything out of a play. Where like he'll be getting sacked and he'll like pop the pass out there, but it's not like he's doing it in the contest, like in the tight windows or anything where you're like, it's more like, oh no, he saw a guy out of his periphery, or he kept looking downfield while he was getting sacked and made sure he got the ball out to a guy that he had as an outlet. So those are the kind of things where I think his feel in the pocket, where he does have a tendency to drift towards pressure, which is kind of annoying. Like this is just his footwork is really bad, and the drifting is bad. Sometimes he just won't let plays die. The accuracy, he has multiple spray misses in a game where you're just like, what the hell, man? It's like Clemson is the worst example where I think he had like 8 or 10 just really egregious misses. But again, I think if you get him with a guy like Van Pelt, where he played the position, he is going to tell you what kind of footwork he wants. It's like, I don't really care what your quarterback coach or your trainer is telling you. I want you to do this. And having that kind of consistency where the footwork matches up with the routes, which makes it a lot easier on a quarterback because it's like, all right, one step I'm looking here. Second step, that's not there, I'm looking here. And it makes it a lot easier for your process. Like those kinds of things I think would work so well with May and get the best out of him, where the things that scare you can be minimized with experience and time. Whereas Jadon, I think he has gotten better, but I wonder how high is his ceiling. And I still think I think he's like low end Pro Bowl potential. I think he's going to have a great career. But if we're talking like this is the guy that I want for my franchise, Drake May excites me a lot more than Jadon, who I cannot stress enough is super talented in his own right and is going to be very good. I just think if we're talking as a pure passer, I think Drake May is different. And I think he and Caleb Williams is in his own tier, then Drake's in his own tier. Then there's like a bit of a drop off to Daniels, and then there's like a bit of a chasm, and then it's the other guys.
Yep. So you're not, you can't, you think you put McCarthy, Penix, and Nix in a like as low, like in a second round tier below, or like middle of the draft?
Because we all know there's like that quarterback tax where, sub second rounders are going to get taken in the first. JJ, I understand because he's so young and you haven't seen a lot. So it's like, okay, what can we get out of this guy? And you're thinking about coaches, they think they can fix everybody. So I understand why JJ is getting that first round buzz. The other guys, like even Penix and Bo, it's like they're older guys. They have some pretty significant limitations. I would like them more as like early second rounders or like really at the tail end of the first round, but I know they're probably going to more be like in the middle of the first. But I don't, of them, I like Penix more. Because you talk about like from a personnel and like his makeup, like his strengths, I think are a little bit easier to project, and we've seen them. But like Knicks, I think he's still good. I think if he goes to a good system like Jalen Hurts feels like a good comparison. They have a lot of the same strengths. Where if you go to a system where they have a good line, they have a couple weapons, I think he can be good. But like on the Pats right now, I don't know that he would be able to have much success early on.
Yeah. So that's where that quarterback conversation has gone. We could kind of go down the road here. One of the things we haven't fully done, and let me see if I can find it. Taylor's top 5. So here's the guys Taylor would like to see as potential signings here for the Patriots, and kind of walk through. We've talked about Ridley a little bit, but give us some of the, and you mentioned Jonah Williams some, but give us a little skinny on what you like and whether or not you think they are attainable.
Yeah, so Christian Wilkins, I mean, they have money. So I think all these guys are attainable on this list. There's other people where I'm not sure because it's like, all right, maybe they want to chase a ring or, they just wouldn't want to come to New England for scheme fits and all that stuff. I think these guys would have pretty good reasons to come to New England. Christian Wilkins in the division, the Patriots are very familiar with him. One, I love his personality. I would love to see him with Judon. But he's a guy who's a really good run defender, although I think he's more of a penetrator than a space eater, although he can do both. I've seen him get washed out pretty badly by double teams, which is really the only thing about his game that really worries me. But I think he's one of the best D tackles on the market and would work really great as like an upgrade over what Lawrence Guy was, where he can be that base guy for you, but he can also play on pass rush downs. Calvin Ridley, we've already talked about him. I think he can be a really good Z where he's, maybe not a top 10 receiver, but I think top 15. And that's, I think that's what this team needs. Jonah Williams, I know he gets a lot of crap, and I'm not saying he's some great player or anything. There's also a misperception about him that he's a right tackle. He played right tackle begrudgingly. He did not want to. The rest of his career, he's been a left tackle. And if you're talking about a guy who they're probably going to draft at least one tackle, so, as a 1 to 2 year stopgap option, I think he's solid. Is he going to get, is he going to need some help? And can he struggle against some of the better edge rushers in the league? Yes, because he's not a great athlete. But he is a good technician, and unlike someone like a Chuks Okorafor, where I think he is a better pass protector, Jonah Williams is more well-rounded. So that's why I like him there. Again, the tackle market is not good. This is just a reflection of that. Tyron Smith is the best one, but he's not coming to New England. I think that's highly unlikely. Obviously, Trent Brown's off the board. That leaves you with Jonah Williams as the best option. Andrew Van Ginkel, I've liked his game for a while. Another guy they're familiar with because he was in the division. They played against him a lot. He's a late bloomer who really broke out last season in a big role. I think he's a great fit if the Patriots don't re-sign Anthony Jennings, because I think it's Matt Judon is their every down guy. Jennings, if you sign him, he needs to play on rundowns because he was one of the most disruptive defenders in the entire NFL, despite only being an early down player. Van Ginkel, I think after last season, he's probably going to want an every down role, but he's really, really smart. He can play, again, he's a solid pass rusher, but I think he's a better run defender. He can play on or off the ball. He's got good versatility. So I've thought he was a great fit for the Patriots for a while, especially as more of a stand-up outside linebacker edge rather than what is really on the market mostly, which is the guys who like to put their hands in the dirt. And then finally, Noah Fant. He's a guy where he hasn't had a ton of production in the league, but if you look at his tape from last season, I mean, the Jaguars just signed Gabe Davis to a 3-year deal. I wonder what that means with Calvin Ridley. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting.
That they may know Ridley isn't.
Gabe Davis might have been the last guy I would have signed.
Yeah, I don't like he's like a great dude, and he has his talents, but there's also, you want to talk about a guy who disappeared. I think he had like 5 or 6 games where he literally didn't do anything.
0. His game log is insane from last year.
Yeah, it's like, dude, I don't understand how he's even a starter, but yeah, no Gabe Davis for me.
He had 0 in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, and 1 game with 6 yards. 0 and 1 game. It's, I mean, insane.
That's why you cannot scout highlights, because
that's
if you
to go with
highlights,
he's 21, 35, and 32 yard games. Unbelievable what a no-show he was.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. So yeah, no Gabe.
And he's got feet for hands. And I've never seen anything. Somebody pointed this out to me early in the year that I never noticed. His an underrated thing with receivers is that where their hands are when the ball comes in. Every time the ball is near Gabe Davis, his hands are this far apart. And he's trying to close on it. So he's like clapping at the ball at the last second, coming in 65 miles an hour from Josh Allen instead of like right here to just fit it into a spot. Yeah. You should see it. Every time the ball's near him, he's like this and closing on it. And that's one of the reasons I think he's terrible.
And I see somebody said that Diggs took away all the plays.
It's not just for Diggs.
Diggs was not productive for a stretch last year.
Diggs disappeared.
Yeah.
Diggs was getting doubled, and they were daring him to throw to Gabe Davis. That's how friggin' bad it was. You were getting Shakir and other people in there as well. Was there someone tweeted great move for Vikings? We miss anything here?
Vikings for Grenard? I'm guessing that's Grenard.
Oh, that was Grenard from earlier.
Yeah, that would be my bet. That'd be my
yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, you can have your Gabe Davises. That's fine. That is very interesting what that does to the Ridley market. So here's what we're going to tell you. The window opened at 12. Teams can start negotiating, but it's obvious the deals are coming out. And by rules, you can agree to deals, but you can't sign them. But these deals are happening fast and furious. And guys are going off the table, and it is interesting whether the Pats strike. Here's what we're going to do here at Patriots Press Pass, and here's how you can keep up with us. If you want to watch, follow along, get reaction if anything happens, and also chat with one another because there's a ton of you in here and it seems like you're having a good time. And a good opportunity to do so. If the Patriots make a move that we think is significant, and I don't know what we're going to base that off of, but certainly a Ridley signing or a tier 1 free agent and a big splash, or if a couple kind of lump together that are smaller deals, but they're close to one another, we're going to pop back up here. So do two things. Subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. That's going to let you know when we do go live and when a new video is coming up, and then you guys can jump in here, which is great. And then you can also follow me or Taylor or Patriots Press Pass or Patriots CLNS, I should say, on Twitter. And we'll send out a promo and get it out to all of you there and let you know. If you do follow Taylor on Twitter, you should also be, subscribed to Patriots Press Pass. It just makes sense. So we will pop back up here. No moves in the first hour. I wonder if that at all is an indicator of the Patriots taking a slightly cautious approach. You would think if they were coming out swinging big, they might have swung already. It hasn't happened, but we'll see. The Gabe Davis thing in regards to what it might mean for Calvin Ridley is interesting. You also do wonder whether some teams out there are leery of giving Ridley that big deal and whether the price isn't as prohibitive as maybe we thought. And maybe the Patriots are kind of sitting on that to see what's happening. Michael Onwenu, still nothing.
Do we want to talk about Onwenu before we get off here?
We can, yeah. Still nothing there. Onwenu's another wild card because you do wonder if the market, this is an old Patriots maneuver. Go find your thing. And if you want to come back, we can talk about it. See if he wants to come back, see what he wants to do. If he likes it here, you never know. I do wonder how much the Gerard Mayo thing helps retaining certain people. I think coming back to play for Bill might have not been fun for a lot of people. And I do think the fresh start I do think the fresh start and the guy who gets me thing and having a kind of ground floor mentality of like, let's build this together now that we're kind of might be appealing to some people. Also, change is change and not everybody likes it. These are normal human beings who have lives or have families and are building lives different places. Not everybody always wants to move, so it's not always about that. And sometimes, all things being equal, you like to stay where you are. And Onwenu he's not Trent Brown. He's not like, peace out, I'm gone. There's no indication that he wants out of here no matter what, but they're going to have to pay market. We just don't know what that is. So how high on your list is he?
Real quick, friend of the show, Jeff House, said that the Jaguars are still hoping to retain Calvin Ridley. So I guess not a total indicator, but still, I'm just glad Gabe Davis is off the market. But with Mike Onwenu. So another friend of the show, Sophie Weller of A to Z Sports, spoke directly to Onwenu, who told her, while everything was going bad during the season, that he would like to stay in New England. And I don't know why that would have changed, especially with Mayo. You would think that would even be the case even more. I do think that it makes, as long as they're serious about trying to bring him back. So I keep calling him a cornerstone. They want to retain their guys. We've seen indications of that with everyone but him. They put the transition tag on Duggar, re-signed Hunter Henry and Kendrick Bourne. But Onwenu is by far their most important free agent. So I think that they legitimately do want to bring him back. Maybe Onwenu wants to see what he can make on the market because he says that he wants to play tackle next season. So maybe it's going to be a case of, okay, what teams are going to pay him like a tackle because he is a specific scheme fit. If you're an outside zone team, like a true outside zone, not just wide zone, then you're probably not going to love the idea of Onwenu because he doesn't have that athleticism to jump out in front of guys. He doesn't have the same kind of mobility. Now, you could say, okay, but what about Van Pelt's scheme? With Van Pelt, I watched it. They had DeJuan Jones, who's bigger than Mike Onwenu somehow. He was playing right tackle, and he wasn't even a very good run blocker, and he was pretty good for them. So I think he still can fit with Van Pelt. Mostly in their scheme, the guards are the ones who are the more mobile people. Like, they're the ones who typically pull. With tackles, it's more on, like, toss plays and things like that. So I think that he just wants to see what his market really is, which makes perfect sense. I know that Landon Dickerson is now the highest paid guard at $21 million per year. Highest paid right tackles are making $20 million per year. So Onwenu at the very probably going to make like 21 at least, maybe in the 22 range. I like the idea of him signing a contract like Elton Jenkins did with the Packers a little while back. Let's see, the top defensive players off the board heading to Vegas. Somebody just signed. Who is it?
Yeah, I'll tell you. Keep talking, Wilkins, and I'll put it up. Don't worry about it.
He's going to the Raiders. That is disappointing, but
I was going to give it to you. I was letting you have your moment.
Yeah, well, at least Onwenu isn't going to have to deal with Wilkins at all if he's back on the team. But yeah, that's disappointing. But again, at least he's out of the division.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm tweeting right now.
There it is.
Patriots in on him. Let's see.
That's the news. Wilkins off the board. That's one of the big money free agents. He was also on Taylor's list.
Yep.
Correct? Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of my guys.
Yeah. A lot of money. Every deal you're gonna say a lot of money. I can talk myself into Bakhtiari too, by the way.
I could too. I just don't love it. But if it happened, I'm not going to be upset. Like, they need to stop gapping the player, but he's always hurt. He doesn't play. So if it's cheap, sure, go for it. But I mean, that's also, then I think you have to go earlier at offensive tackle because that guy's going to have to probably start a decent amount of games.
Yeah, we'll see. So Taylor, anything else before we wrap here?
No, I think that's it. I said Onwenu, we're going to see what happens with him, but yeah, I'm just going to mourn losing out on Christian Wilkins.
It is what it is. We're gonna wrap, but like I said, we will be back if there's major news. So definitely keep it here. And as we said, subscribe to the channel. Turn on your notifications. You'll be notified if and when we go live. If something happens, if not, we'll check back in with you tomorrow. Of course, follow Taylor on Twitter for up to the minute stuff, and as well as CLNSmedia.com, where you can find all of our written work. We are going to wrap. And again, Taylor, do we have an outro as well?
We do not have an outro.
We do not. Okay, the Garden Report, we got an outro. It's kind of weird, but we'll get around to you eventually. I promise you that. But anyway, thank you guys for hanging out. Very good group here in the chat and following along as free agency has kind of begun, and the Patriots have yet to do anything, and I'm okay with that. So we'll see what happens as the day develops, and we'll probably see you guys here hopefully at some point later on today. Take care.